people, we're locked in to the Big Bad Station, outradio.com, and we have the one and only Paul Anderson here. He's ready to talk to us and speak to us. So, of course, without further ado, please introduce yourself and let the listeners know who you are.
Greetings. Thank you so much for inviting me onto the show, DJ Kat. Just to say, my name is Paul Anderson. I am the CEO of an organisation in Hackney called Voyage Youth. And we've just gone through a huge amount of change since the pandemic struck, and also since the impact of Black Lives Matter. And charities like myself, like ours, are just now in a different space altogether, and it's a really positive, strangely enough, environment for us. So, really grateful to be here on the show this evening, speaking to you.
Definitely. And of course, how do you kind of describe yourself as a person and what you kind of do?
Oh, wow. Well, with great difficulty, I suppose, because I'm one of these sort of people that kind of came through what I would say quite a tough background, a really tough upbringing. I was brought up essentially by my mom. She raised three of us in a single parent household in what is now called Highbury, whereas the area I knew was just Holloway Road. But yeah, really, so I was born in the 60s, and if you like, my childhood memories are really around the sort of very kind of 70s music, and also the riots of 81. And particularly as a young person, I was inspired by what happened in the riots, and we were a group of young people who were invited into a studio to make a track and to discuss some of the issues that we felt as a result of the riots. And that was a really important turning point for me, because I sort of realized the power of voice, of young people's voices around important subjects. And to this day, I still talk to young people very sort of passionately about that experience, and wanting to get young people to continuously talk and to really share their experiences, because they will have value not just to themselves but also to the agencies who need to hear what they're feeling about things.
Yeah, definitely. And when you speak of that, a little tear comes to my eye, because we're speaking of riots, we're speaking of black injustice, I suppose. What's your kind of experiences, just so that the listeners can kind of get a feel of where you're coming from?
Wow.
Exactly.
It is. I totally pick up on your point about the passion, because believe at that particular point in time and going through it, being stopped, being mercilessly kind of manhandled by police, and friends, colleagues dying, and the onset of that time, we just started to get the feeling of more harder drugs in the community, and so that time has a particular relevance to me.
Yeah.
As a kind of period of one, sort of finding out a lot about myself and understanding what the overall bigger plan was. And I think that kind of came home in real spades at that particular time in the 80s. And I was excluded from school, it's the word they used today, but I was kicked out of school literally, physically, at the age of 15. And a lot of things kind of came to me that I needed to change. And so yeah, it's a really interesting environment. But I think that in itself has always helped me to want to work closely with young people today, and just be a kind of person who's there for them, because I was lucky and fortunate to have people who listened to me, heard me, gave me an opportunity, and trusted me. And I don't think a lot of people do that today, and I want to be there for a lot of our young people in exactly that same way I was for them. And I think Voyage is a perfect kind of like incarnation of that idea and that sentiment.
Yeah, definitely. And where does that name come from? Because it's an unusual name to call your charity. So tell us. You've got to tell us.
Well, I think there was a whole range of things that kind of came for it. Firstly, Voyage was formed by a really important outfit, inspired by a really amazing policeman, you know, by the name of Leroy Logan. And they had the foresight to create a charity, and that charity at the time was called the Black Police Association Charitable Trust. And it was like such a mouthful. So when I was invited to sort of kind of steward the organisation and bring it into a more kind of independent and out of the kind of clutches of police, because even black police still have that kind of negative veneer, where in Hackney, you know, kids don't, you know, they just hear police and that's it, light off still. So
Yeah.
so it was important that that brand of what we wanted to do was kind of didn't actually have that connection. And so the word Voyage was created, and it was kind of really to kind of echo the fact that young people need to go on a journey, and through that journey they would be inspired. But at the same time, Voyage stands for Voice of Youth and Genuine Empowerment. So it was kind of an acronym. It sort of described what we wanted to do, and all those things came together and then formed the whole reason for the brand of Voyage to be created.
Wow, I like that, you know. I like that.
Yeah, the wordplay. I think there is a little bit of poetry within the organisation, because, you know, spoken word's quite big. A lot of my tutors who deliver our work, they're all spoken word people, so we're always quite interested in using words in a different way that have a little bit more meaning than just the word itself. So it's kind of part of how we think about things too.
For real. And, you know, what kind of programs, what sort of things do you guys offer young people?
Yeah, we focus on the word leadership. You know, like, we get young people to recognise that, you know, firstly, we are, you know, we're original kings and queens, right, of, you know, the world. And we talk about leadership, so that we frame our conversations around, you know, what does a leader entail? What, you know, what are the qualities of a leader, and who are our leaders? And we get a lot of young people to kind of get to realise that they are themselves leaders. And whilst that's the kind of broad frame, because you never kind of go to a school or to a youth club and enrol someone and say, we're going to talk about the police, or, you know, we're going to get you to become this. A lot of young people need to hear something that sounds fun, exciting and relevant, and we cut through all of that need to sort of promote, you know, like that deficit agenda where we're talking about, you know, we're going to challenge, you know, the police, or we're going to challenge racism. A lot of time, a lot of kids kind of don't instantly want to jump at that. So we talk about, you know, do we know what our leaders look like? Do we understand what the qualities of these leaders have? And if so, do we want to emulate that? Do we want to copy those, you know, and actually become those ourselves? And usually when you get down to it, a young person gets down and realizes, yeah, because if we're not leaders, someone's going to lead us. So it's a great way of framing that conversation as a starting point, and then we build from that into things like, you know, like we have a qualification called Young Leaders for Safer Cities.
Okay.
That helps to educate young people about how to deal with police, and in fact, how you just deal with authority. A lot of young people who get excluded, even like myself, we had all these misnomers and wrong information about, you know, about how authority, the role it played, and we felt it was oppression. Of course it was, but at the same time, it's about understanding that oppression and understanding that reason for why it exists, and then you can then just sort of start driving in, well, if we know this now, how can we change? So a lot of that is very much kind of synchronized and riddled through what we talk about, so they learn about the bigger topics through a very small conversation, and that's the way we frame it. And when kids graduate from our program there after 6 months of engagement, they get to know us, they get to know our team, they feel comfortable, and then we form another program which is a graduate program, and our mission is to then support graduates from the age of 14 right the way up until they move into school or into higher education. And that's the mission really, because we're sort of predicated on the idea that if you support a young person from 14, and don't forget it's a challenge even at 14, because 14-year-olds sometimes are so far gone, so committed to some of the negative stuff that our kids are experiencing out there, and they don't actually realise that and it's hard to pull them back. So sometimes we're looking at how to work with young people a lot younger, from the age of 10, even transitioning into secondary. But the main mission is to really support young people from the age of 14, and then right the way up until 17 before they make that choice into university or into college. That's our mission. And if you can protect and support a young person over that 3 years, a good chance that the influences of all of the input that you put make them make a real positive change in their life, and that's really what we're really testing and we're really piloting over the last 20 years.
Yeah, for real. That sounds really positive, and something that we seem to be missing in our society is youth work and the importance of it, just because it's either not there or there's just no funding. What's your experiences about it?
Wow, yeah, Lord. So obviously I became a youth worker when I came a youth worker in about 1986. So after speaking as a sort of, young person around a lot of policing issues, I became a youth worker then. I did voluntary work, and then I got paid, and then I became a probation officer. I did lots of youth justice work, and then I became a regeneration person. So I went through a lot of stuff. But obviously I've seen changes and government cuts most of my life, literally, and they've always been affecting youth. I've always been the first to go. And I remember back in the day that when a lot of youth services were hosted by the leisure services, one of the things that they said is, boy, we can't keep this in leisure services anymore. And that was a reason to kind of cut youth service quite fundamentally, right, in the late 80s. I remember that narrative then about, the leisure services are no longer a home for youth work. And then, so the smart local authorities then said, let's bring it into education, and they were able to protect it. So I noticed that, and I saw how they were able to protect, and that did lose a lot of youth provision in those days. I remember Tottenham, I remember places in Hackney, Islington were all cut quite seriously, but they were able to keep some open because of that transition into education. But youth work is always the first to go. It's the first victim of cuts, because it's seen as a sort of, if you remember the very famous words of Oliver Letwin when he wrote his letter to Margaret Thatcher in 1981 and was trying to convince Margaret Thatcher that no investment should be made to young people because of the stereotype of BMW. That was about, people using government money to buy cars and, to smoke weed. And I remember he particularly had a little line in it that was about playing Afro and bongo drums. And I was like, whoa, that's all them things is good for us. What is this guy going on about?
Yeah.
But youth work in my history and my understanding is that it's been through a huge amount of cuts over the last 30 years, and every year it's been more and more serious and deeper and longer lasting. And recently, as you know, the austerity since 2008 has just been literally been a real big target for youth provision to be cut. So like Tottenham, I live just around Tottenham, just north of Tottenham, and we have only one youth club in Bruce Grove. Hackney has managed to save 5 youth clubs, and everybody else in those 2 boroughs that I know is really a voluntary effort or a church effort, and there's very little funding and very little sustainability in that. So the youth are the ones who get the biggest cuts, and it's usually because of those kind of government messages, which is you're only giving money, you're supporting the kind of negative agendas, you're not really supporting the positive ones. Where we're like, well, those people there, if they don't get anything, they're not even going to get a toehold into the main life. So for me, if it wasn't for youth work, as a person, I don't think I'd even be here today. So I know the importance of youth work, but I'm just one voice against people who can make one word decisions and then they cut it for a whole millions of people. I just don't understand that.
Yeah, definitely. It's something that upsets me, if I'm honest. The cuts, and then they complain about how bad young people are. Well, what do you expect? You know what I mean?
Exactly. The young people are, for me, and blessed to all the people that have suffered or suffering as a result of the current pandemic. But for me, the young people we're going to be looking at that. If you can go 100 years into the future, the crystal ball, look back, and they'll see how this COVID and also just cuts as well, how it's really affected the generation, and how you'll see the effects of that generation make indents in unemployment, on people who are not going to be given opportunities in jobs and so on and so forth. And I just feel like we're yet to really understand the impact of what's going on around us. And I just feel that our youth are the ones that we should be supporting the most at these times. But, again, we need a lot more voices to support that because the young people often don't have the advocacy, and schools don't help in that respect, and we've got few youth workers on the ground now, so we need all voices to kind of come up to support them really.
Yeah, definitely. And last year was a crazy year, obviously the pandemic and so on, even this year. But one thing as well was the movement of Black Lives Matter. How did that kind of impact yourself and the young people that you know?
Wow. I mean, BLM to me was like, wow. It was like, that was just amazing to hear that our brothers and sisters in different parts, different lands in America, to bring that idea up, and to see the effects of it. 2 or 3 years ago, I was watching what they did at the airport of London. I just thought, these guys have got something. There's something about them. So I was really amazed and inspired by BLM. And obviously, since the death of George Floyd, while everybody's been at home watching countless stories of Rodney King and all the various abuses, and even the Windrush generation all coalesced to kind of bring people into that space, that boy, we have to really get behind Black people, because sufferation is for real. It ain't just them man complaining now. We've really suffered, and I've felt how that positive environment's changed, because as a charity, we were struggling. We were very much trying to just, survive. Every year was just a battle of survival. And whereas this last year, when the pandemic hit and Black Lives hit, after that, we got calls and emails and contact that people and some of the large banks, we had Goldman Sachs reach out and say, look, we can drop a whole load of money on you, how can we help? We had, banks, building societies, educational institutions, we had insurance companies, hedge funders, we had flower companies, Arena Flowers, we had Inky List, beauty products, literally all, and as a result, it made me bring those people in and have really straight up conversations with them and say, look, I don't want a one night stand, but look, if you guys want to give us some money and you want to throw some money at us, we'll take that, because we need to survive. Yeah. But I'm looking for long-term relationships where I can plug you into a relationship with our young people who would very much love the opportunity of working for a bank, for an organization like you. Will you be up for that? And you know what? The unanimous message was yeah. And I got roughly 40 companies have joined me since then. And at the moment, I've managed to extract from the employee list something like up to 70 individuals who are now mentoring all of my young people. Not all of them, obviously. We've worked hundreds and hundreds, thousands of young people over the years. But over the last 3 years, we've been able to reach back to our graduates, pull them in and say, look, how much support do you need to kind of move up the ladder? Would you benefit from a mentor? Would you benefit from additional support? Would you benefit from ongoing programs of support, that help you get into these places? Yeah. The answer was 100%. So we're able to bring both our young people back to that relationship with those corporates, and now we're in a completely different space now. I'm sort of planning years ahead with the investment we've got, and we're now putting strategies in place that will see us be able to see young people materialize in those jobs. And I know what those guys are going to do when we get them into those places. They're going to remember what came before them, just like I remembered what came before me, if you like, the opportunities I got. And I'm hoping that they do as much to pull in the next generation, and that they become the leaders in those jobs, and they become the people who make sure employment rolls out fairly and helps to attract people to those businesses. Because a lot of those people come to me, that those businesses come because they realize their credentials are low.
Yeah.
Like one company told me the one black guy on the floor of 170 people is what we have. And I sort of said, look, that's not sustainable. And this poor one black youth there who's there on that floor, how do you think he feels?
Yeah.
Had some really tough conversations and really open conversation with a lot of people, and I just can't believe how much. You know what? To believe it, I was actually thinking, these guys. Surely you can't. Surely you don't feel that's that person's gonna feel away in that place, right? You don't. I'm like, no, man. We just want this guy's gonna be all right. Like we got one in. We just need to get more, right? I'm like, well, but what are you gonna do to make sure that when more come, they feel welcome? And that's been the ongoing conversation. So I've been able to influence things like their ongoing strategies for recruitment. I've been able to have a conversation with them about what environments they're able to, create so that, you can include people. And I tell them about the Black Police Association model, because the Black Police Association is probably one of the oldest networks, of employees within a broader organisation who can come together and talk about the things that they need, whether it's about recruitment or whether it's about retention or whether it's about progression. It's about those things. And, we've been able to share the experience of the Black Police Association and actually say, well, adopt something like this. That will be how you grow it. So it's amazing. So, we've been able to influence a lot of things just by that position. And because we're one of I would say we're probably about one of 3 to 4 organisations that are Black-led, Black and Black-focused. So we're high on the list of these people, and they really like to hear what we've got to say about things. And I'm able to pull young people from their experience up and down the age group and be able to position them to have good conversation with these people. And that's what's so new and so amazing as a result of the pandemic. So it's kind of a double edge, right? We've got the death on the one hand and the potential impact of what this is going to look like for our people as we look into the future. But at the moment, short term, we seem to be okay, and we can plan a little bit more longer term. So it's a double edge, really. I can't say that it's like boom, but it's certainly helpful for us to know we can build a future for our young people.
Definitely. It's such a positive. That seems more like of a positive outcome of something so negative that's happened for so many years. I'm sure if you ask most of our Black elders, our Black young people now, they've been stopped and searched and, wrongly mistreated. So it's kind of like a strange one, because, I don't know about you, but when I seen George Floyd, the actual death itself, it was so sad. I could picture my family members there. Do you get what I mean? So it was more deep.
Wow.
It was very deep for me. I don't know about you.
Wow, deep. I mean, deep. I said to my wife and my family, I said, I can't watch that because I couldn't watch it. I couldn't. To this day, I haven't seen it. I've had to hear what other people have said about it, and I just know there's an image that I can just. But I've been too caught up by the thing, because when you've had people that have had similar experiences that you've grown up with, and you've had your own experiences, that thing there happens. Like, you don't need to be convinced by watching it, but it's just sad that when you look and you took the camera back from the picture, one guy described that as you looked, there were diverse officers that were stopping the camera from going to look at it closer. And then they took a step back thereafter, and they saw the shopkeeper, who wasn't white, who was the person who made the call. I just looked at the whole thing and I said, boy, this world, man, there's a lot of education here that needs to go. It's not just about us and being resilient and leaders, but it's about how we can get other communities to recognise the role they have to play in this as well. And I feel that's the real agenda today, is how we can get other people on our message, supporting what we, the outcomes we want to see, because our voice isn't enough in this space.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm just sorry to go off on that one, but it's a double edge. I really, it's a trigger for me as well. Like, I've had police experiences as a young person, and it's just stuff that's still going on 40 years later. No difference.
You know what, I'm happy you brought that particular topic up, because just because even though you've mentioned so many positive things that have come out of that experience or what people have seen, do you actually think it will change? because my elders, for example, were like, we've seen this before, it's not going to change.
Yeah, I know. I totally get that, because like there's a sense that we're not going to see it in our lives, really, and I feel that's the bit that I feel our elders talk about, is that they're not going to see it in their lives. But we've seen a black president in our lives when we never expected that, so that happened, and I for me, part of it, we have to live with that degree of uncertainty, but at the same time we still have to kind of be positive about it. And it's very tough, though. It's not easy to be positive always, but for our young people, like a lot of them see it much more, sometimes more serious and more, like more vexed. So like, we have to be positive for them, because it can actually drive them to a point where they don't want to recognize anything about the state or its apparatus. And for us, like, that state ain't going to change, so to some, it's not going to move fast, but what they can do is adopt policies that can kind of allow us and give us opportunities. But for real change to happen, I think we need a real revolution, man. That revolution has to be based on, like, distributing wealth equally. It has to be about, not about all these sycophantic leaders who are just in it for themselves. It has to be about people who are genuinely there for people, not just for themselves. And there's so much to be done.
Definitely.
Positive. We have to be. I always have to be positive for our young people. I feel like they hear a lot and they see a lot of negativity, and I don't want to always, like, massage that. So our whole thing is recognizing that's what they feel, but we've got to learn to convert that and help them through it so they can overstand it. That's the thing. We have to move it towards overstanding, not understanding. That's where we're at most of the time.
Definitely. And tell the listeners how you achieved your MBE and your involvement in the Black Awards.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. Well, like I've been involved in Carnival an awful lot. As a young Londoner, Carnival was the thing to just. That was the main party. That was the thing to look forward to. So it was a big place for me to go as a youth still. So I was baptized in reggae music, like I grew up on the Lone Ranger, Yellow Man, Toy, and, listen to Dublin. So I was always big in reggae. So when you knew you could hear a sound system, like, by the truckload, literally, that was my place. But it was a bit of a weird one, because I've got an African background as well. So when my kind of transformation took place, I had to go home. My dad sent me home. He came back to visit me, and he said, look, you have to get to know who you are. You have to know what the eldest son means in our family in this context. So when I went there for that 3 months, it literally hit me about who I am. And those things, that brought me towards the African music. And, like I always played, performed, I did dance, I did everything as a youngster. So like it was natural for me to kind of bring that thirst and interest for the stage of Carnival together with the whole kind of performance and practice of music. And I was involved in African drumming and dance as well for a good 10 years in the 90s. And as a result, I kind of went for this job in Luton. It was to run Luton Carnival, and then also to establish a centre for carnival arts. And I thought, wow, that kind of brought together my passion of music, dance, bringing it together, but also how to structure carnival and bring it into school. Yeah. And I was one of these people, because I kind of got involved in the music just when Black History Month became, I think it was like 1987 or 88 when Black History Month first started. And I remember bringing a couple of guys together and writing this article called Afro Dance on the Blackboard. And we took it into school, and schools were like, no, we want this. And I remember getting a lot of bookings for it, and I learned how to structure projects for schools. So when I was invited to apply for the job now in the sort of in the early 2000s now, after all that experience in the background, they said, what do you want to do for Carnival Arts? And I said, look, I want to make sure that Carnival Arts, helps to bring Carnival artists, out to the forefront and makes them mainstream, so that they can no longer just be doing this just for Carnival. They get paid, they're respected, and we need to build a centre for that. And I presented that to them, and they said, do you want the job? I said, wow. So I became the CEO of a charity which I was there to found, which was called the UK Centre for Carnival Arts in Luton. And I managed over the 11 years of running that, we generated something like 14 million, just over 14 million. So I was able to raise 7.6 million to build a centre. And over the 10 years of the programme work, we had about another just below 7 million in terms of what it took to deliver a range of programmes. And as a result of that, I was nominated for an MBE. I didn't take it initially, though, because I had to go and consult the elders. I remember going to speak to people like Arthur France, who run Leeds Carnival. I spoke to Pepe Francis, who's the sort of main band leader of Ebony.
Yeah.
I spoke to Michael Riley. I had to consult the elders and say, listen, man, this is what's going on. These guys want to give me that. What do you reckon? And I remember them saying to me, why, Paul, you see, how many of our Carnival people have got anything? How many of them have got something to boast and to show that, this is a sector? And I was like, yeah, true, there's probably about 3-4 years. Yeah. So they said, Paul, take it. That was Arthur Francis' main words to me, and I accepted, actually. So in 2011, I accepted that. So I remember my mum's quite a royalist, and she was really happy, because she was grateful to hear that I was acknowledged by the Queen. My mum was just really proud of me. Yeah. That was a double reason to do it. So I took that, and I thought it always helped me, and wherever I worked, I'd be able to bring that along and be able to utilise that for fundraising purposes. And to some extent, that's a little bit true, but it's not huge.
Okay, for real. Tell us as well how you kind of made the link with Black Awards, how that happened.
Yeah, we just got in touch. I think Ebony reached out to us, and we just heard about this award, and I remember I've been involved in lots of events and stuff like that, but when I heard that this award was reaching out to people and also trying to bring together a whole range of different people from different industries, and she created awards for different groups and bodies, I said, yeah, man, this sounds like the kind of MOBO for for voluntary sector and charitable organisations working with the youth. So I just thought, this sounds like an amazing event, and I just said, yeah, let's support this, because anything that's got that gives light and gives opportunities to our young people, I'm always there. And when you hear people like Ebony, they're young themselves, you just want to help them to be effective and to make it happen. So that's why I just chose to help it.
For real. We're coming to the last few questions, but who inspires you?
Oh, wow. Well, my kids, actually. Not just my kids, but other young people. Young people really inspire me, because, they have just raw talent and raw power. And it's great watching and observing young people and seeing that manifest in their lives. And I just feel like they are a constant source of inspiration for me. But I'm a sort of person. I've established a home in Ghana, and I have a whole team of people around me there who I just love and adore, and they are people who take care of things for me there. I'm constantly inspired by them. I'm inspired by people like yourself who just committed to their work, and to me I take inspiration from sometimes the smallest thing. I can look out of a window and see the sun shine, and I just think, boy, that just feels good today, man. And I'm inspired by that, and that can just help me through the day. So it doesn't take much for inspiration, but I look for it as well, and that's something that I do because it's part of my own way of staying on top and feeling good, and it helps my own mental health. So I look for inspiration too, even through music, through song, through word, anything. Try and soak it up where I can.
For real. I think you have to, wherever you can get the inspiration, positive inspiration, then go for it.
100, definitely I'd say that, because, you know, like, there's so many things competing for our attention today, you know, and we have to learn how to weed out the stuff that's not doing us good, because, you know, you are what you eat, right? Yeah. It's not what you just ingest through your mouth. It's what you take through your eyes, you listen through your ears, you know, and all those things they make you. So I try to surround myself with positivity and people around me that care and love, and I create a future for myself that I constantly want to wake up in the morning and act on. So I just, I don't let the dark forces of negativity ever get in that way, because I'll find a way to shine through that.
Yeah, definitely. And, you know, what's next for yourselves, for you, and how can people connect with you?
Oh, well, I mean, you know, for me, I try to be as accessible as I can. Anyone, I always, you know, spend time giving advice. I act as a mentor to an awful lot of people. In the same way I'm still a mentor, I'm being mentored myself all around me. But Voyage is a charity. We're based in Hackney. We can be contacted through that. I'm also on social media. I'm on LinkedIn. My name, Paul Anderson, is on LinkedIn. You can find me there. And if anyone just wants to learn a little bit about how we work, I'm really open about how we work. I really like to share, you know, the different strategies that we use. I'm into the idea of co-petition, not competition. Yeah. Because if we share what we do, it makes the mainstream wake up and realize this is the real thing. This is how it works. And I don't like to create competition. I like to build partnerships and work together. So if anyone's interested in linking up and you know, like, especially connecting our youth, a lot of our youngsters don't even see outside London. I remember as a youth going up to Birmingham to a blues dance when them man were charging 50p to enter. But I learned so much going up there, and I just realised we have to learn to move out of our zones, out of our comfort zone. So, yeah.
Definitely. And, you know, it's been a pleasure talking to you. I felt really inspired by yourself. The passion of youth work. It's been an honour to speak with you. And, you know, I hope when this pandemic is finished and sorted, you know, you can come to Coventry and you can meet some of us down here.
Love to come up there. Love to spin a few tracks. I'd love to even bring up some of my old albums and spin them as a guest. You know what I mean? Like, I just
yeah, we can sort that.
Just do some old school revivals and stuff like that. But yeah, thank you so much though. I really, really appreciate being involved and speaking to you as well, Kat. I really appreciate that, and keep up the great work that you're doing up there. Love that.
Blessings. And of course, any final words for the listeners out there before we go?
Just saying to everybody, man, just hold it down and, you know, like, keep up your head and, you know, keep doing your thing and stay on it. Don't let anybody tell you anything, man. The thing that you do for you is for you. And, you know, it end up being for everybody still. So just keep on it. Don't stop it.
For real, definitely.